Hey, welcome. Come on in. Sit down. You can sit over there. That's Joe's chair. You can sit in front of the fireplace there and stay warm while you listen to Hearts for Clubs, subtitled, I'm Doing This for Your Own Good, or Is He Gonna Go, or Will He Stay? The text for this was written for my mom and given to her on Mother's Day in 1998. The audio and video recording of this was in memory of my brother Joe. So let's begin. Sometimes, when it is necessary for one's well-being, a person must endure something which is unpleasant for the sake of something else that is of greater benefit later. For example, a patient finds it necessary to endure surgery and pain now with the hope that it prevents a body from getting worse later. Or a person who wants to have enough money for Christmas presents in December must put some cash in the bank every payday beginning in January. Or a soldier must endure basic training at one point in time in order to learn how to stay alive and complete his mission later. Now, we must face the fact that in such situations there are times when anger, frustration, and doubt arise. The doctor is criticized for cutting too deep and causing so much pain. The banker is viewed as only having interest in and being after our money. And who, at the end of boot camp, ever goes up and thanks the drill sergeant? Ah, yes, these poor people who were only looking out for our welfare are so often looked upon with scorn and so often the object of critical words. What are they able to do? It seems that nothing is able to be credited to the side of these faithful, loving, careful, helpful, well-meaning people. Believe me, I know what I'm writing and speaking about. However, every once in a while, a discovery is made that throws a different light on the entire issue. Such a discovery was made recently, and I now have the evidence that enables others to see what I was attempting to do all those years ago when I started all those clubs with my brothers. Oh, I am able, as I write and speak this, yes, indeed, I am able to hear my mother and brothers guffawing, chiding, and laughing, as well as being able to see them smirking, throwing their heads back, and wagging their tongues as they mock these words. Therefore, before going on to write about my lengthy efforts, which were intended for their own good, I need to explain how all this got started. First of all, I admit that I am the one who was responsible for Joe's basic attitude. When Mom and Dad brought Joe home from the hospital a few days after he was pronounced alive at birth, I hit him with a baseball bat that Grandpa McCoy had given to me. Now, I know that sounds really bad, but truly it was a small bat. Besides, I had never had a baseball bat before, and I wasn't really sure what one was to hit with it. So you really couldn't especially blame me for hitting the one new thing that arrived since I received the bat. I thought they came as a matched pair and were intended to be used together. You couldn't really blame me. Mom and Dad could. Dad literally threw me across the room and up against the wall. I was stunned and sat there thinking that I better be good to my new bat and not just go around hitting any old thing with it, including Joe's head. I looked up, and I saw Mom running over to me. She was yelling at my dad and threatening him that if he ever did that again, she would clean his clock, or words to that effect. Good old Mom. She was coming to the rescue. I held out my arms to her and quickly discovered that she was ready to throw me back to my dad. She yelled at me and made me feel really bad about my meager swing of the bat. Later in the evening, I was in Mom's lap. She was talking quietly to me, explaining how my actions were entirely inappropriate. She talked so calmly and smoothly. "Mike, what you did earlier was not good. You should never hit your little brother. I don't ever want you to do a thing like that again. Do you hear me?" "Yes." "Do you understand?" "Yes." In a still softer voice, she then asked me the most important question in my young life, a question whose answer would be a major impact on the rest of my days with my younger brothers, a haunting question that was the question. "Mike, you don't want your brother Joe to leave, do you?" I remained silent for a few moments, and the reality began to sink in. That Joe's staying or Joe's leaving was my decision. His remaining with us or departing from us depended entirely on me. My hesitation to answer did not pass by unnoticed, and Mom repeated the question, this time with a hint of terseness. "Mike, you don't want your brother to go away, do you?" There were a number of issues to consider, and I needed some more information before I could really make an informed and intelligent decision regarding my brother. For example, if my brother left, would it be held against me? Or if he stayed, would I be able to keep the bat? Mom, exasperated with my lack of commitment and continued silence, snapped sharply, "Mike!" This was it. And amid the conflicting thoughts, I made the declaration that was more forced than volunteered. "He stays." "And you will do all you can to keep him from leaving?" "Yes," I answered as I thought, and then continued, as the way to do this suddenly came to me. "Yeah, okay. Yes, Mother, the boy may stay. I will do what I'm able to do to keep him from leaving. I will certainly do my best to make Joe feel a part of this family." That night, I thought about the plan to keep Joe around. It would take years before it could be carried out and put into action. I needed someone else to help me. The birth of my other brother, Tim, signaled the beginning of the action. And so it was, in the stillness of the night, I quietly crawled to the edge of Tim's crib and informed him of our plan and his part in it. I spoke softly so I didn't wake Mom. "Hey, Tim." No answer. Good. He was listening to me. "Tim, listen carefully. You and I have a big job ahead of us. We have got to create an atmosphere where Joe will feel a part of this family. I made a commitment long ago, long before you were born, and the day has finally come to reveal the plan to you. Are you ready?" No answer. What a great brother Tim was. No objections at all, just silent affirmation. "Look, Tim, the way that we are going to keep Joe here is what I have termed Operation Club. We're going to employ the use of clubs to keep Joe interested in hanging around the family. As I see it, it may take quite a number of these clubs throughout the years to keep Joe with us, but I know that we can do it. Okay?" No answer. Man, that Tim was all right. What a little trooper. "Now listen carefully, Tim, because it's not going to be easy. We don't want Joe to feel that he's running the club, because he might just cancel the club and leave the family. To prevent this, I will have to take the offices of club president and club treasurer. Doing so may put me in the position of being criticized, but look, I'm willing to endure it. At the same time, We don't want him to get the impression that he is the servant of the club. So, Tim, you're going to have to be the club janitor and sergeant at arms. Dear brother, are you willing to do this?" No answer. What more am I able to write? Words fail to express the true sacrifice, the meaning, and the nature of Tim's volunteering that night. Anyway, the clubs began. Tim was always elected to his servant offices, and I, because I always began the clubs, was never elected to office but simply assumed the important offices of president and treasurer. By the way, since I was the one to begin the club, I was also exempt from the customary membership fee, and I grandfathered out of any and all initiation rights. Joe, in order not to give him too big a head, and also not to make him feel that he was a bottom feeder, was elected to the prestigious offices of vice president and secretary. At his swearing in, Joe was always told, "If for any reason the president is unable to fulfill the duties of his office, particularly if this is due to his own death or a sudden case of amnesia, then you, Joe McCoy, as vice president, will be expected to step in and fulfill the duties as president. Do you gladly and willingly accept these great burdens upon your able and trusted shoulders? If so, answer, 'I do.'" His standard reply throughout the years was, "Yes, sure, Mike." At every swearing in, Tim silently expressed awe at the grandeur of the event, as well as sad resignation that he would never be able to occupy any office higher than that of doorkeeper and particle surveillance monitor. Anyway, as I said, the clubs began. There were indoor clubs that began as a result of winter weather, rain, and cold. The Pencil Club was one of the first and was one where we would collect and trade various pencils from a wide range of places we visited. After calling the meeting to order, collecting the dues, and hearing reports from the various officers, we would begin the club business of collecting, showing, and trading various pencils. The first step was collecting. I called dibs on collecting in our house. Tim chose to run down to Bud's and Grandma's in search of pencils. Joe ran up the road and tried to talk Uncle Cease out of a pencil, which he never did, and to explain to Uncle Henry what a pencil was. Joe did get several pencils from Aunt Edith and Cousin Jim. The next step was bringing them all back and showing them. I cannot tell you what a thrill it was for us to look at those 9 No. 2 yellow pencils of varying lengths. The first runner-up was a pencil of mine that had an interesting series of teeth marks allegedly made by Auntie Crystal's dog. I also had the show winner, a pencil reportedly made from the same tree from which Grandma Allworth's wooden leg was carved. One club that never really did much and didn't last very long was the Fly Club. Someone noticed that a dead fly on the window still had a colored wing, where the angle of the light was just right, so we decided to start the Fly Club. But there were 2 basic problems. First, this was an indoor club, and there weren't many flies dying on the windowsills in the winter. Second, when the flies did come, it was summertime, and we had the many outdoor clubs to occupy our time. The most successful and longest-lasting club came after we had moved from the one-room shack down by the sawmill to the spacious house up on the corner. We decided to start the ping-pong club upstairs. The only room that was large enough was my bedroom, a room that occupied 70% of the upstairs. In order to set the sheet of plywood on the sawhorses in my bedroom, we moved me out of the large room and into Joe's room. Joe was so excited about the ping pong club that he didn't mind having his sagging bed moved under the sloping roof where Mom kept the boxes of junk stored. It really wasn't much of a room. I mean, there was no door, no walls separating it from the main upstairs. We put Joe's bed under the eaves and in the corner, and I do recall that Joe did have the brick chimney running up through the floor in his room. While he didn't especially care for the feature, I pointed out to him that Tim and I didn't have anything like that in our isolated rooms. And besides, as I informed him, he was doing this for the sake of the club. It worked, and at first, Joe was satisfied with his room. The ping pong club truly kept our time occupied when it rained and was cold outside. Round-robin tournaments were held, and marathon games to 101 points were played. Joe really felt a part of the family. Tim and I would look at one another and smile the smile of two brothers who were making their brother feel welcome and their mother happy. The inside clubs and the outside clubs differed in a couple of basic ways. First, while the inside clubs usually focus on either the doing, like the ping pong club or the paper airplane club, or the collecting and showing, like the stamp club, the pencil club, the fly club, the matchbook club, the bottles of colored water club, or the drawing club. The outside clubs were mostly made up of initiation rites. Second, the inside clubs required membership fees and daily dues that were primarily monetary. The outside clubs substituted rigorous physical feats to gain membership into the club and running various gauntlets. 1, to maintain membership, as well as 2, to serve as penalties for infractions of various selected unwritten club rules. This is where Tim and I really made Joe feel wanted and a part of the family. The bicycle club was a popular outside club. We would establish a course and have timed laps. For short courses, like the one around the fir trees in the front yard, we made 10 or 20 laps in a run. One of the standard courses was 2 trips down to Grandma Allworth's and back. One of the favorite courses combined varying terrain. The lap began in the front yard, traveled along a crooked path through the woods to the old gold mine down by the creek, up the lane that came out at Bud's sawmill, and then up the road to our house. We took turns and timed each other. Throughout the length of the bicycle club, records for 3 age categories were established and periodically broken. The club that Joe remembers most distinctly was the Tarzan Club, and in particular, the initiation rite for membership in the club. Tim simply wouldn't do it, and, of course, I wasn't required to go through it. If you want to see the exact location, then walk straight back to the creek from our house, and you will come to a steep drop-off to the creek below. Just below the top on the far side of the creek is a rock outcrop. It was from that outcrop or cliff that those who wanted to join the Tarzan Club were required to jump. It was a vertical drop of probably 15 feet to the ground, to the 60-degree slope. And from the spot of impact below the cliff to the boulder-laden creek was another 30 or 40 feet. If you look at this place, you will know that this is a place where someone could really have been hurt, and I am thankful that Joe wasn't hurt. Anyway, Tim and I watched Joe's jump, tumble, and fall to the creek. After having his momentum stopped by a large rock in the water below us, Joe stormed up the hill, intending to do me great bodily harm. As he climbed using his hands and feet, he declared, "I quit. I don't want to be a part of your stupid Tarzan Club or any other club. I'm leaving." Tim and I went to work trying to keep Joe from leaving the family. Our encouraging words helped, and the next day Joe appeared to be back into the spirit of the brotherly love that we extended to him. However, Tim and I both noticed that he didn't have the same look the next day as we continued with the stalking and hunting seminar of the BB Gun Club. This important part of the club activities was concluded with a field exercise. Joe and Tim took their BB guns and went down to Grandma Allworth's house. They had 10 minutes to get there. At that point, we began to hunt each other across Uncle Alf's brushy field, and especially the stand of old-growth fir trees in the middle of that field. The club game pitted them against me, and as we tried to get into a position to shoot one another with the BB guns. The BB Gun Club activities for the day concluded with an examination of the various BB marks on our bodies, with awards given for the most BB marks, for the largest BB mark, and for the hunter who represented the club's highest ideals. Joe won 2 of the 3 awards. One of the last clubs that we had was the Endurance Club. This short-lived club began and ended on a 90-degree day in August. The initiation ritual for my 2 brothers involved both physical stamina and mental discipline. Both of my brothers were required to wear full-length plastic raincoats that were completely buttoned to the neck and cinched tight at the sleeves. As I started a small fire in the fir needles in the front yard, I explained what was required in order to pass the initiation rite, doing so with a Scottish accent. "All right, lads, listen up. Do you trainees desire to become members of the Endurance Club?" With sweat beginning to form on their foreheads, Tim and Joe replied respectively, "Yes, sir," and "Come on, Mike, get on with it." "All right, lads, listen up. In order to be a member of the Endurance Club, a right honorable club in the sight of brave men, you must put out this fire. You must run down to the creek by Grandma Allworth's house and get a big gulp of water. Then you must run back here and spit out the water with such accuracy that you put out the fire. The club's president wants you both to become members, so he gives you the benefit of wise counsel. After you get a mouthful of water, do not run back here too fast. If you do, you will have to breathe through your mouth, and you will lose the water that you need to put out the fire. However, do not run too slow, for that fire will be getting bigger as time goes by. Are there any questions?" Joe replied, "No." "Well, then, you lads better get running, 'cause this fire is only going to get bigger." With a determined turn and in full gear, Joe and Tim started running down the road to Grandma Allworth's house in the hot August sun. From my position in the shade of a fir tree, I was able to watch the lads while I tended the fire, occasionally blowing on it to occupy my time. My brothers made it to the creek, running by Grandma Allworth's kitchen window in full rain gear. Grandma watched in disbelief as they went down to the creek and quickly came out. As my brothers approached our yard, they made a sort of huffing, deep-breathing sound as their cheeks bulged with the water. Their faces were red as they bent down to extinguish the fire that was 3 times larger than when they started. While they gasped with the opportunity to breathe through their mouths, I observed, "Well now, lads, it looks like you haven't stopped that fire from spreading any further to this side. But it also seems that you're going to have to make another run for that water to put out this side." At this, they took off down the road to the creek once more. This time, as they passed by Grandma Allworth's window, she was going to find out what was going on. By the time she hobbled to the back porch on her wooden leg, Joe and Tim were coming up from the creek with mouths full of water. Consequently, when she asked them what they were doing, they only made some guttural noises as they passed her on their faithful trip to put out the fire. Grandma Allworth pivoted on her wooden leg and hobbled into the house. She telephoned Mom and asked, "Mary, what are the boys doing?" "I think Joe and Tim are suffering from heat stroke. They got raincoats on, and they're only able to make grunting sounds. What's going on?" Mom looked out the window and saw Joe and Tim jogging up the small hill in the plastic rain suits. She told Grandma that she had to go, and as a result, she hung up the phone. Mom came outside to the place in the yard where I was, stood by the fire, watching in horror as my red-faced, sweaty, grunting, huffing brothers trotted into the yard, came up to the circle of burning fir needles, and tried unsuccessfully to extinguish the ever-growing fire. Mom looked at me and said, "Mike, you are a sap." With my brothers gasping for air, I replied, "Mom, am I the one wearing a full-length plastic raincoat on a hot August day? Am I the one running back and forth to the creek with gulps of water trying to put out a fire? Am I the one standing here trying to catch my breath? No, and yet you are calling me a sap." And with that, the Endurance Club ended. Tim complained out loud, but Joe said nothing. Both of them took off their raincoats, but Joe threw his down on the ground and went into the house without saying a word. He went upstairs to his room with no walls, the sloped roof, and didn't say a word. Joe looked at the ceiling, the chimney, and the place where there should have been walls. He didn't say a word. Two things came as a result of that day. First, I like to thank my brothers who were so taken by the excitement and the responsibility of their tasks in the initiation rite of the Endurance Club that they both became firemen later in life. Second, despite my repeated attempts to keep Joe feeling a part of the family, he had his fill, and he was ready to go. As evidence of this, I am able to present the documentation of this fact, which was recently uncovered while rummaging through one of those boxes that Mom occasionally traps me into bringing home, one of those many boxes that she calls keepsakes, and what her three boys call something else. But before you read this document that follows, you need a bit more background. After Joe left his raincoat outside and went inside, I followed him to his room, looked at him all quiet-like on his bed. Suddenly, the haunting question from my childhood came back to me. "Mike, you don't want your brother Joe to leave, do you?" At that point, as had happened so many times in my life, I determined that we needed another club that would draw the family together, this time an inside club. As a result, I began the Coin Club in the late 1950s and thought that I would publish a local weekly newspaper. As the editor, I made the decision to charge 3 cents per copy and to seek advertisements from the family. So I went to each member of the family and asked if they wanted to put an ad in the new paper. Each one had an ad for what was wanted. The ad that Joe placed was the evidence of my failure. It was too late, as the following copy of the weekly coin paper, Volume 1, Number 1, sadly demonstrates. 1. Bring your extra pennies to Mike McCoy and exchange them for silver money. Limited supply. 2. Tim McCoy. All 1919 coins wanted. 3. Mary McCoy. Wanted. Workers. Clean. Clean work. Muscle toning. Fresh air. Not afraid. Help in wood products. Help, help, help. Wages paid when done. Number 4. Mike McCoy. Top prices for all Indian head coins, all Lincoln head coins before 1940, 1943 steel cents, 5 to 10 cents, 1955s, 10 cents. And the final advertisement in the newspaper, number 5, Joe McCoy, room to rent.